Good morning, Yasha Allah. Well, it's actually the time is moving towards being late in the evening, but it's always good morning. Mahalia Jackson, our dear sister and mother, says it will always be howdy, howdy, and never goodbye. Someday, I want to introduce this broadcast to you, Yasha Allah, and to the general public with an opening statement like, as I began to become more aware of myself and the treacherous position I was being groomed in as a young boy, maybe around 2, 3, 4 years old in Abaco, Bahamas. I distinctly remember hearing a song, and it's a song that it is being repeated today. A well-known song describing the manner of our affection for each other as a community. You remember the one love, one heart? Let's get together and be all right. But there's another. If I remember it before finishing this output, then I will reintroduce it. A very telling song it is. But in any case, as we get back to the matter of hand in this scriptural journey, our opening text is from Malaki. Malaki chapter 1, verses 2 and 3. Well, the passage actually begins with verse 1, of course. And it mentions in its opening statement the burden of the word of Yahweh to the 12 tribes by Malaki. Now, I've seen that manner of introduction many times in the scriptures, as we have it in what we call the King James Version, the burden of the Most High Yahweh. As I have grown in this slave colony of the Bahamas, called the gateway to the New World, I have been harshly introduced to a wide range of brutality in the Bahamas that as I grew up, I was being encouraged to think of the Bahamas as a place of citizens with brotherly kindness coursing through the veins in the heart of the people. And I was of the mindset to pursue that line of thinking that I was in a place of love and caring. And I tried to use the line a couple times in some productions. But having experienced the tail end of the 400 years of enslavement in the New World, or the gateway to the New World, finally, I had to conclude that my first stance towards community life in the Bahamas was sadly mistaken. I had to recognize, by the fact of the absolute brutal, destructive mannerism, or the destructive manner whereby I was treated in the Bahamas, in the circle of what I was being encouraged to think of and call my home, in the circle of my home. The introduction to absolute brutality and enslavement I experienced right there. In my home environment included an aunt who was a Masonic woman with her lover. They were both Masonic. And it dawned on me eventually, as I was experiencing life and having the challenge of being brutalized by this aunt, I became very suspicious of her at a very early age. Young boy. It's a very early age. By the time I was suspicious of her, she had already done the deed to sacrifice me to Satan in the Haitian voodoo. And so as I bring you this word here, I think of the fact of my studies as I began to try to understand life and what was going on in my individual and private community as regards the relationship to that aunt that I came to recognize was one who had offered me for a sacrifice to Satan long before I could walk. As a baby, 2 weeks old, she had already offered me for a sacrifice to Satan. Introduced me to savagery and absolute brutality that was equivalent to the treatment of the 12 tribes, 400 years enslavement in the New World. So mine was a private introduction, and the enslavement proceedings offered to me was a private matter that people on the outside of my personal family dwelling, had little understanding and recognition of, then coming to this time of life to understand that I have been living in the new world. The private playground of Edom for the destruction of the primary tribe of Jehoiada. I began awakening to this reality as I was understanding the brutality that was being practiced on me by my aunt. It awoken me to the idea that something dreadful was going on wrong with me as a young boy. So I began my search from that time. And finally, here I am, almost 70 years later, fully understanding what I began to experience as a young boy in the gateway to the new world. Absolute savagery and slavery conditioning. And finding out, of course, along the way, that what this aunt did was offered me to Levi. Of course, Satan, Gabriel, and Esau were in the mix. This was a triaxial work between these three, Satan, Esau, and Levi. They were there in the early days of my life, coming to the tail end of the 400 years enslavement. They were there to welcome me into torture and destruction that I can now fully understand. And so with that, I am fully able to understand Malaki, that this word that came to Malaki was a testament to the Levites to warn them of making a pact with Esau. That's why you have it in the opening statements. He says, I have loved you. You are Yasha'Allah. You are part of Yasha'Allah. You Levites. I have loved you. Yet you say, what do you mean? I have loved you. And he replies, what's the reply? Was not Esau Jacob's brother, saith Yahweh? But I loved Jacob. And verse 3, and I hated Esau. He's speaking to the priests, to the priesthood, to give them a reminder of the situation that they were already in and contemplating to get deeper into. This is what he was saying to the priesthood. But of course, you know what, with the editing of the scriptures, what Esau called, how he puts it, anyway, with his throwing away of scriptures, pieces of the scriptures, throwing them away and calling them, unfit to be in the canon, the canonization of the scripture. In that exercise, Esau threw away large portion of the scripture, claiming that they were not worthy to be in the canon. So has been allowed to freely destroy the connectivity of our cultural life and our knowledge of the Torah with serpentine smoothness. Esau has offered this explanation to the world over and again. In my short lifetime, I heard it many times. And not having a in-depth understanding of the meaning of Esau's throwing away of the scriptures, claiming that this book, is pseudepigrapha and all manner of stupidity that Esau gave as an excuse for him ripping up and tearing up the scripture. But here we have, in this address to Levi, to the priesthood, the Most High is concerned for the fact that he knew that Levi was going to make this pact with Esau to destroy the 12 tribes, with his concentration on the house of Judah, Yahweh. And he sends the message to them: I have loved you, but mind what you are doing, what you're going to do. You're going to make this pact with Esau to destroy my people, who are your brothers. This is what the address to Malaki was about. And now we are beginning to understand it with the revelation of the 400 years enslavement that the Most High expressed to our progenitor, Abraham. This was the concern of the Most High towards the Levites. I have loved you. What are you doing with Esau? What are you doing in making this compact, this pact to destroy my people? The reality is that the Levite paid no attention to that. They were quite like Esau concerning the birthright offering, rejecting it, not wanting it, throwing it away. And yet, when it is offered to Yaakov, comes back to claim it and make a statement to the world that this birthright was his heritage. And the world, I think I am free to say, has accepted that in the face of the fact that the true birthright headship, the principal offering of the birthright, that is the Mashiach, came into the earth in the days of Herod the king and Pilate, Esau. And they worked their will upon him and destroyed him because they understood who he was. They understood that they had the principal offering of the birthright that was promised, that they rejected. So they were glad to brutally crucify him and create their Nicene Creed that comes to be their downfall. It's a testament against them, a testament of their own volition. They made the Nicene Creed, crucified under Pontius Pilate. Can't get more plainer than that. That's what Esau has said concerning his work of destruction in the earth. But we have it here already in Malaki, a warning to the priesthood that they should not do what they had in their hearts to do. He says, I hated Esau and laid his mountains and his heritage waste for the dragons of the wilderness. Although Esau says, we are impoverished, but we will return and build the desolate places. So saith Yahweh of hosts, they shall build, but I will throw down, and they shall call them the border of wickedness. That's who Esau is, the border of wickedness. Once you touch Esau dwelling, you touch the border of the wicked kingdom. Inside of that border is only wickedness and destruction. This is what the Most High was communicating to the priesthood, to Levi, as he was contemplating entering into this secretive relationship against the Most High and the Mashiach and the tribes. He sends a warning to them. But with Esau's canonization, the full context of the scripture was not readily explicit to us. Now we know by the revelation of the 400 years enslavement. It comes out of there. That's where it comes out of. You see how thorough the Most High is, the Mashiach is, in revelation, hitting every point on target. And nobody can argue with it because it is true. It is the truth. In the light of the 400 years enslavement, we now understand what Malaki is saying. And despite the warning, and despite the counsel, Levi, like he saw in the birthright situation, Levi hardens his heart and stiffens his neck towards the destruction of the house of Yahweh, and has, for the most part, accomplished what he set out to do. Because having made the contractual agreement in the revolution that is called the French Revolution, that leaves out the key component to the success of the main effort of the revolution, that was to feed France. France was impoverished, like Malaki says here. Whereas Esau says, we are impoverished. This is where France was, impoverished and hungry. And the nobility all were in disarray. And there go Levi offering comfort to his destroyer, because he wants to destroy the Mashiach. This is the key understanding. He's making a threat against the Mashiach before he comes in his human birth. In the revelation of his coming to be the leader of that group of 12 sons of Jacob, the Mashiach comes to be the principal leader of the group. So because it took so long for him to come, for his arrival to be recognized, and with the scriptures having been deleted by Esau, Yasha'Allah lost continuity of the scriptural revelation and had difficulty understanding the relationship that Esau and Levi had forged against the covenant. And so Esau was allowed to slip by like the serpent, slip in and slip by, engaging with Levi and co-signing the destruction of the 12 tribes. Of course, Esau by himself went into South America and took the 10 tribes down. And came back into the New World and released the work of destruction into the hands of Levi. You know about two-soul liberty and what is called the Haitian Revolution that has been offset from the main body of concern in the French Revolution. This is the principal area of responsibility for the work of the destruction of the house of Judah, Yahweh. And Levi was complicit in it. It's brought out right here in Malaki that Esau would be impoverished, and Levi comes to his aid to offer the house of the Most High's praise, Yahweh. The Most High's praise, Levi offers to be a sacrificial means of Esau's survival after all the destruction that Esau had already committed. Levi thought it was no more than fair to commit the rest of the tribes. Yeah, taking care of the South American tribes, the 10 tribes. And now he comes to take care of the tribe of Judah. And Levi was ready on hand to do his part. And as I've shared with you time and again, that it was Levi who was in charge of destroying us in the gateway to the New World, whose principal headship of community was North America, where Judah was placed. And so the concentration of Levi's work of destruction was there, as we today who are alive have witnessed ourselves. Although we may be only 20 years old or 30 years old, 100 years old and plus, but the destruction that we experience here was under the hand of Levi. This is what I want you to know. It was Levi's responsibility to destroy the Malcolm X's and the Martin Luther Kings and all the rest of them. They were under the charge of Levi to be destroyed. And this is what Malaki was warning of. So you can put this with Bereshit chapter 15 and get a clearer understanding of the 400 years enslavement of the tribes. That's the point. Now, the mistake the costly mistake of Levi was that he certainly did his work like Esau has done his work. He got to crucify the Mashiach in his quest to destroy the work of salvation that was for these 12 tribes. And so, having understanding of that, he understood it in the past. He understood it, where it was not so clearly articulated as we are articulating it now. He knew these 12 tribes were special. And with his rulers, Gabriel, Satan, the fallen, and 1/3 with him, their concentration was on getting rid of the salvation process. That's what the crucifixion was all about, getting rid of the salvation process. Never mind the inheritors of the salvation promise, but the very process of achieving it was under attack from Herod the king unto Pilate. The Levites were warned. So, in the impoverishment of Esau in the French Revolution, Levi accomplished his mission to be an adversary to the Mashiach, who was to come to take away the sin of the world. Isn't that plain to understand now, Yasha Allah? That 400 years enslavement article is no joke. There's serious revelation in there. That the adversaries thought to cover over that brutal treatment of the tribes in the 400 years enslavement. It was to create a memory loss, to actually make you forget. I mean, the realization of a memory concerning that historic achievement could not offset the treatment that the body of the tribes experienced, even if their memory was shattered by the brutality that was exercised upon them physically. Their own body had the memory of the enslavement exercise upon them that many of us today are realizing. And our bodies have been in a reactionary mode concerning the 400 years brutal enslavement. And here you have Esau coming in, putting out his hand to make believe of a sign of friendship after the destruction he wrought in the midst of us. With the help of Levi, we're not going to forget it. We're not going to let Levi forget it. So the heat that the Father is putting on Levi now, I welcome it. I wish the fire was falling now on Levi. That's my mindset about it. So look at what look at what Yahweh calls Edom. He says of Edom, they shall build, but I will throw down, and they shall call them the border of wickedness, and the people against whom Yahweh hath indignation forever. And your eyes shall see, and ye shall say, Yahweh will be magnified from the border of Yasha Allah. the same land that Esau has been putting up this contest about, trying to claim birthright for, trying to re- reorganize our personality by the 400 years enslavement brutality, and then coming with the voodoo of Levi to construct us into something else, and thereby to turn over, to do a political schematic of turning over the kingdom by Trump and Biden. That's how it was said. To achieve it right there in Trump and Biden. But how can you get around the eyes that do not slumber or sleep and knows everything that goes on? Most High wasn't asleep. Esau, of course, has long promoted the absentia of the Most High. And he had people saying, this is their language, there's no God. Because God means the absence of the Most High anyhow, because that's Satan. But he had people thinking that when he said God, he was meaning the Most High. But God is a deletion of the Most High. And so, Levi set up all his what do you call it? This development of species and all that kind of junk to say, as the fool said in his heart in the book of Psalms, I believe chapter 14, the fool said in his heart, there is no Elohim. That was Esau, complete fool. He's called foolish in the book of Devarim or Deuteronomy, foolish nation. To think that the Most High had gone to sleep and left the world in the hands of his boss, Satan, and the fallen ones, and did all that destruction in the 400 years enslavement of the Hebrews. This is only a treatise on the 400 years enslavement, Yasha Allah, to help us to come to grips with and to understand the meaning of the 400 years enslavement, and to be able to see in each part of the development of the 400 years matter what was taking place that was hidden from our eyes by the making of many translations and the matter of taking out, Xing out of the scriptures that Esau thought it was his privilege to do. He said, this book here is not, this is not worthy of being mentioned in the canon of scripture. So he put that one in his hidden briefcase. And this part of this book, this need to be taken out too. So he went on for a long period, destroying the main content of the book, because the continuity of the revelation of what the book was bringing forth was skewed by Esau deleting portions of the book, as we have begun to realize, and still we're not fully conscious of the depth of this exercise of deleting the books of the scriptures. And today, we have many of our people, especially those who have gravitated to what is called the Kemetic community. They have made themselves, as it were, fools, trying to uplift Kemet. And when you look into our scriptures as they are now, even though they were edited so heavily and excruciatingly by Esau, with all that edition, that editing going on, yet with all of Esau's attempt to put himself in the scripture, couldn't get it done. Couldn't get. He had the books under his control for years. He couldn't get the sign over. He couldn't get it done. Go and ask him. Ask the best of Levi, Esau. Ask the greatest of Esau. Ask the greatest scholars of Esau. They couldn't get it done because it is the word of Yahweh. You can't tamper with his work. You cannot add or take away. He's got it all accounted for. So if you take away, he's able to replace it because he has a record under his control. And if you add, he's able to delete because he knows what the original should be. So Esau and Levi have been stumped in all their efforts to get rid of his omnipotent hand of guidance, of history, from eternity to eternity. There is the hand that turns the wheel of our ship on the ocean of life. And the Mashiach is the one. Not Esau, as we have seen in many books, depicting Esau as a good shepherd, guiding the sheep. No, Mashiach, where the power, who can cancel all that Esau and Levi have done. And so now when you go to read Malaki, brothers and sisters, you can read it with a renewed insight to what it is saying. What it was saying then, when Esau made the effort to cut it, to sever what it was communicating to the Levites, to make them halt in their attempt to destroy the house of Judah. It was already recorded, and yet they would not turn around. Same as the covenant of promise to the 12 tribes, written in the scriptures a long time ago. Yet Esau makes the effort to turn it to himself, to call himself the inheritor of the covenant. His name ain't nowhere in it. His character is nowhere displayed in it, because it's the righteous character that is needed by the Most High to govern the earth, to be in charge of the conduct of its business undertaking. And Esau does not represent that. He doesn't represent righteousness. All he represents is hate and destruction. So how could you, I mean, how could you hope to insert diabolical destruction for righteousness? How could you, what would make you think? What would make one think that you can insert a direct opposite for what ought to be and make that, become a noteworthy transition, something that could be applauded? What would make you think that? Except Gadriel, the fallen, the most foolish, the fool, saying in his heart there is no other Hayam, knowing that you got kicked down, thrown down out of the Shamayim for rebellion, and coming to the earth to present some other claim, lie, theft, destruction among the people of earth, out of whom the Most High lifted 12 tribes for his inheritance. And wherefore? Because he searched through humanity. This is the beauty of the revelation, that the Most High had the ability to search through the whole of humanity, and he found only one people that loved him out of all the different dynasties and societies and so forth. Of all of them, he found only one people that loved him, and to those he made provisions for them to be sanctified and made set apart to inherit the blessing and the privilege to be rulers over the earth. This is the size of the matter. This was what Satan and Esau was trying to cover over and hide. And they tried to reproduce it. But how could you reproduce goodness with iniquity and murder and pillage? How is that possible? How could you hope? By any means, according to Malcolm X, how could you hope? By what means do you reinstate a philosophy, a way of life that is opposite to what the Most High requires in the Torah? And the Torah is laid out, set apartness, and righteousness is what is required. But yet, Gadriel, Satan, got Esau to agree that he can replace set apartness and righteousness and peace, brotherly kindness, and the spirit of fellowship. It could be replaced by pillage, destruction, rape, homosexuality. Hey, all of this destructive behavior. How could you hope to overshadow the need for righteousness and set apartness with this behavior? Yet, this is what Esau and Levi have set themselves to accomplish as a stench for the nostril of the Most High, Yahweh. But yes, he chose you, Yasha Allah. Yeah, we made him sad along the way for our lack of understanding of what he was doing. what he had set out to do. But you were on his mind all the time. Yasha Allah, come to encourage you today, as always. Stay faithful. You get tired sometimes. I have to mention again the Dixie hummingbird, your brothers and my brothers, who say, trouble in my way. I have to cry sometime, but Mashiach will fix it by and by. Today, we are encouraged. Get up, pick ourselves up, Yasha Allah, renew our faith, renew our hope, the hope of our calling, and one who is faithful. The Mashiach is faithful. I bring to you again the scenario with Kepa and the Mashiach, as the Mashiach was getting ready to face crucifixion by Esau. When Kepa came and said, oh no, master, far be this from you, the Mashiach said, get behind me, Satan. You have become an offense to me. I got work to do. I have something to do that cannot be put aside. I have to do this. Move yourself away. Because he was on the way to secure salvation for the 12 tribes, the brothers of his crib, whom Esau and Satan have thought, with the help of Levi, also to turn aside from the heritage of life eternal and a life of obedience to the Torah. That is what is required of the Most High, obedience to the Torah. God really don't want that, nor does Esau. He showed us this in all of his doings. And he comes to put out his stinking hand towards us to represent some sign of friendliness after all the destruction you have done already, and have it sealed in your heart to convene, if it were possible, another 500 years of brutal destruction. This was in your plan concerning the thought to uproot the 400 years release from your hand of terror under Satan. You were planning 500 more years to terrorize and destroy the earth. But the blood, oh, the blood, aye, that never loses its power, the blood will stop you in your quest for another 500 years. That 500 years will be your demise and your destruction, if it be such a length of time. But whatever it is to be, you're going to pay the price, the cost for your actions with Levi and everyone else who want to oppose the eternal, the Most High Yahweh. For he says, I am and none else, and my purpose shall stand. So it was in the beginning, so it is now, and ever shall be unto the end. He is our power and our salvation. Let's keep the faith, Yasha Allah. We're moving towards home to see our land and our heritage. Because faithful is he who has promised and also will do it in the name of the Mashiach, our King. So let it be.